Tracy. Welcome to my channel if you haven't been here before, or welcome back if you watch my videos, and I thank you very much. I love to upcycle clothes and turn unwanted, discarded items into beautiful, fun, whimsical pieces again. And I sold my items for over a decade online, and before that I had rented booth spaces that I sold, but I've retired from selling and now I just do tutorials for you and kind of teach you what I've learned over the years. And we're just taking a simple dress today, and this is just cotton. And I don't know if it's a nightgown or just a cotton summer dress, but we're gonna jazz it up and turn it into a fun sort of hippie boho. You can call it a sleeveless duster or a maxi vest, but it's gonna be fun, so let's get started. So here I have my dress laid out on my table, and the first thing I want to do is cut it open right down the center. And I just took a piece of chalk and I just sort of made some dashes to give me a rough idea of where the center is. But if you want to be more exact, you can take a yardstick and just measure from seam, lay it out nice and flat. Measure or lay it down from seam to seam. And like this one is 31 inches. So I could go 15.5 inches and make a mark. And you can just kind of mark it all the way up that way if you want to be very precise, but I don't take the time and do that sort of thing. So I'm just going to cut down the center, and this has buttons. This has a button front, and it has these pretty little mother of pearl buttons. So I'm going to try to salvage those on this. And so as I'm cutting up the center, I'll just cut in the middle of where those buttons start. Simple. Okay, so here I'm just cutting it up the center. I'm almost at the top, and I'm just going to cut the bottom of those buttonholes. See, it's already looking like a vest. So cute. Okay, so we have the front and middle cut open to make it look like a vest, and this is the cut on this side. This is the front of the gown where we cut the center open. Well, I folded that in half because I want to get rid of this little pointy area. I want it smooth like a vest. Otherwise, that would just kind of jut out and fall in weird places. And so what I did was I took a piece of chalk and I drew a line from this shoulder strap down to just where it kind of blends in with where we cut over here. And these buttons will be gone. And I'll save those little mother of pearl buttons. They're so cute. But I just drew a line that, just kind of freehand down to the front. And then I will cut that. Okay, so this jutted in like this originally in the buttons. I just cut that off to smooth it out so it looks more like a vest. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is create a patchwork. I want this to look like we climbed into an old 1960s trunk and found an old garment someone wore to Woodstock or something like that. I want it to look aged and vintagey and patched up. So I have these are actually clothes, and I picked these out for this vest, and I'll cut patches out of them, and nothing will go to waste. I'll save whatever I don't use for the patch, I'll save it. So my only criteria for picking out garments for the patches was I wanted everything to be a small pattern, and I wanted everything to be in a muted color. I didn't want like a bright, vibrant color on this one. Now, if you start with a vibrant, colorful dress, you might want to do colorful patches, but I want mine to look old and aged. So this is actually a skirt, The rest are tops, and they're kind of a nice cottony feel, kind of like a t-shirt material. And I am just going to cut patches out of these. We're going to end up doing a peace sign on the back, so I may not do many patches in the yellow because I want my peace sign to be in yellow, but I'll use a little bit. But I'll get those cut out, and then I'll explain more about the sizes and placement and things like that. So I'll be right back. Okay, I just cut out squares. Some are large, some are small, some are a little more rectangle. And I just sort of placed them here and there. I didn't go, I mean, this may seem like a lot of patches to you, but I didn't get too crazy because they're not going to be my focal point. They're just basically to add some interest, and I feel makes it look a little aged. So let's see, I have a purple one here. It's about 12 by 10. I put a little yellow one down here that's about 4 by 4. And then, you know, these are any size you want to make them, 9 by about 8.5, 8 by 7. This is smaller. So just do whatever you want and whatever sort of design you want. So now I want to pin these on, and I stick a piece of cardboard underneath in between the 2 layers of fabric when I pin. It just makes it so much easier. I can pin a lot faster than trying to hold the fabric up and pinning and not catching the back side of the dress or vest. Now the patches are all pinned on, and I'm just still working on the front side. I work on one side at a time. And so I'm going to use sort of a goldish brown thread, and I'll do a smallish straight stitch, and I'll just go around and sew those until they're all sewn on. Let's see. Pretty simple, right? Okay, I have the patches sewn on. Here's what they look like. And then I went ahead and did the back. And I just have a pretty large one right here, sort of in the upper section. And I think 4 other smaller ones down here, 2 medium sizes and 2 smalls. You know, they can just be wherever you want them. Ugh, my squeaky mannequin. Okay, so now what I want to do is put a big peace sign on the back. Okay, so how I'm going to make my peace sign is I'll go back to my big handy dandy bowl. It's just like one of those big salad bowls or something you eat popcorn out of, whatever. Just big. And I'm going to trace around it. And now I am just going to sketch about 3/4 of an inch on the outside of that so that this has some dimension. Now this will be a little more narrow than my actual peace sign will be, and I'll show you why in a little bit. So, you know, if you don't trust your drawing skills to sketch around that, you can measure if you want and just make little marks, say 3/4 of an inch, and then just kind of connect those dots if that makes you more comfortable. So I'll finish that up and then I'll show you what I do next. Okay, so I just have my 2 rings and I'm just going to cut that out. What I'm using here is just craft paper. I buy it kind of in bulk from Amazon, and I use it when I package things. I use it for patterns. I use it all the time. And you can use newspaper if you want, or wrapping paper if you need a big piece of paper. So I just use this craft paper. Now I have my circle all cut out, and I'm going to fold it in half. And then that'll give me a nice straight line down the center. And I'm just going to trace over it so that I can see it and so that you can see it. Okay, so your bowl might be a different size than mine. So these measurements are according to my bowl. Let's see, it's just right about at a foot across here in the center. And so on the bottom here of the circle, I have that line. I went up 5 3/4 inch. And then I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to set it on the bottom of that line and slide it up to 6 inches. Like this is the 6-inch mark on my ruler. And so I'll make a little mark there, and I'll do the same here. I'll start at the 6 inches and go to 0. And then I will just connect those 2 dots. Okay, and this is where I sort of freehand again. Now you can measure and use a ruler, but I want these lines to be more fat. I want them to be similar to this ring on the outside. So I'll just sort of sketch that. And you can use a ruler and get as precise as you want. Then I'll come down this side. Just sort of till I have my peace sign all finished, and then I connect these little parts when I'm done. There. I hope that makes sense to you. It's just kind of a messy sketch, but that's okay. When I cut it, I'll cut it straight. Now I'm just going to take my scissors and just cut the inside of these lines here. Here and here. And then that'll give me a peace sign. Okay, I just cut out one to show you. I cut around the inside of that. And I'll do it to these other 3. Okay, so what I did here is I went back to my vest and I laid it out so that I could work on the back side of it. Now mine has a bunch of pleating up here, and when I lay my peace sign down on top of this, I'm not going to try to spread out that pleating because that will just make it look, I don't know, it just wouldn't be right. So I'm going to sort of let that pleating do what it wants to, and then I will lay my peace sign on top, and I'll bring it down from the top probably 6 or 7 inches. And then once I get it right where I want it, I will stick a couple pins in just to hold it in place, because what I need to do is trace this. Okay, so now that I have it, just a few pins in so it doesn't move when I trace it, I'm just going to use a black marker because the fabric that I'm going to use to make the peace sign will be wider than these strips. So I'll just cover my marker with fabric when I'm sewing. You can use whatever you want. I know there are just some cool products out there for sewing, marking pens and things like that. I'm not really into that, but if you are, you just use whatever you like to use when you mark. So I will just trace around the inside of all of these and then the outside. Once I have my pattern all traced, I can take it off. And then what I did is I want my peace sign to be yellow. So I went to my yellow shirt that I'm using and I cut out a bunch of strips. They're about 1.5 inches wide by about 7-8 inches. And I did a few of them. And what I'll do, you can either pin these on or just do this at the sewing machine. Since I have all this pleating, I'm going to pin mine on because that might get confusing. This will stretch out at the machine. So I will just lay these over top of those black lines that I drew, or my marker lines, and go all the way around. And these won't be perfect. It won't be perfectly smooth, perfectly round, and that's okay. This is just handmade and supposed to look kind of earthy and a little messy. And so I'll just keep going around with my pieces. And then mine I will pin on. This, if you had just a flat surface, it would just be easy to do this at the machine and not have to pin it on. Okay, I have these laid out where I want them. And then you can use longer pieces for the lines in the middle. So I just have this longer piece that will cover that entire line. And then I have a piece that will cover this one. I'll have to trim that a little bit. And then a piece that'll cover this one. And now I'll pin those all on. Now I have mine completely pinned. I'm just going to go to my machine and sew it on. And I'll just go around the edge and then go inside. And I'm going to use the golden brown thread that I have been using. And I'll use a smallish, sort of a small stitch. Like I always say, not so small that it takes me forever to sew. And I'll stay fairly close to the edges. So here's what the peace sign looks like. And now, on the side, I want the words gypsy soul. And I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so I want the word gypsy soul, or the two words gypsy soul, kind of to start lower and wrap around to the front. So it's kind of on the side. And it will be made out of ribbon that is sewn on. But the first thing I have to do is I have to take a piece of chalk and I will just, in cursive, write out the words gypsy soul. And it'll look like this. It'll be almost impossible to show you on here. So it'll be about this big. It'll be in cursive. One word will be under the other. And so this isn't a pattern or anything. It's just so that you can see what I'm doing. But yeah, it'll be sort of like that on there. And so after I draw it out with chalk how I want it, then I'll go back over it with a black marker. The chalk is just so I can erase if I mess up. But then once I have it the way I want it, I'll trace over it with a black marker, and then I'll show you what I do. Okay, so I do have the word gypsy soul written out here. And I know it's about impossible for you to see, but I went to my basket of ribbon, and I had a lot of this white. That should be enough, or plenty, to write this lettering out in. And what I'll do is, so here's my G. You can't see it, but I'll go to my machine and I'll just put that ribbon at the tip of the G. Let's see if I can come closer. At the tip of the G, and then I'll just follow it around. As I sew, I'll use a fairly small straight stitch, and I'll just spell out what I have written down here. And sometimes it'll twist, and that's okay. You just need to just get it on there the best you can. And actually, it would probably look better if it twisted in some spots. So I'll just do that all the way down with my ribbon. Okay, so I have my gypsy sole on there. I think the difference is in the details when you make fun things like this. So the very last thing I want to do is we have these raw edges that we cut, and I want to finish those somehow. You know, I could either do a hem or a zigzag stitch, but I want to sew fringe on the edges there. And I have this taupey fringe, and I have enough to go from the very bottom. I'm not going to go around the bottom. I'm just going down, up and down the front. So I have enough to go up the front, around the back, and back down the other side. And what I'll do is I'll start at the bottom, and you know, there's a sewing side to the fringe at the top, and I'll put that towards the raw edge, like this. And let the fringe go more towards the outside of the vest. And I'll come up and around, and I'll go around the back doing the same thing. And I'll come back down the other side. And I will just do a coordinating thread color, just a smaller straight stitch. Very easy to sew. Okay, so here it is with the fringe all sewn. And if you're looking for fringe at a thrift store, it can be kind of tricky to find if you don't know where to look. But if you go to the home decor, like the bedding and the curtains and things like that, you can find a lot of blankets and things like that that have fringe on it that you can just cut off. And also, if you don't have a lot of one kind of fringe to do this, mix and match it. That can be a fun, funky look too. So, happy sewing. Thanks so much for watching.